Hi guys. Um, this week's readings really, gave me a lot to think about regarding scheduling and the rehearsal process and how careful planning can, make or break a production. I was really struck by Bogman's chapters on the rehearsal process and the pro tips for different age groups, as well as Katrin's chapters on working with actors and blocking the play. All of these readings really reinforce the rehearsals aren't just about running lines. They're about creating a structure that supports learning, building confidence, and helps actors understand their characters and relationships. One of the key things from Bogman was the emphasis on meeting students where they are developmentally. In middle school theater, this is really crucial because students are still developing focus, coordination, and social skills, as well as going through these huge, emotional, hormonal life changes. Um, Giving them really clear, concrete instructions and modeling actions helps them understand what's expected, build confidence, and take creative risks without feeling completely overwhelmed or discouraged. If a kid is too embarrassed or shy to try something new, I usually get up and try to model it first so that they aren't the only ones doing it because they're still, they need to be met where they're at. Um, because they're still developing mentally, is what I'm trying to say. um, Another idea I really connected with was structured rehearsal routines, like starting with warm ups, then moving to lines, blocking, and finally, the songs or movement for whatever kind of show you're doing. In my experience, following a kind of predictable rhythm really keeps students focused. It reduces stress, and especially with younger actors who get really easily distracted, and an ADD director who gets easily distracted, it's really nice to have everything, laid out so that I know what's coming next and the kids know what's coming next. They keep me accountable and I keep them accountable. Um, I've also really found that using repetition and reflection, so running a scene multiple times and stopping to discuss what worked or what could be improved, really helps the students internalize feedback and make adjustments on their own, which is something that they're all learning at this age. During our latest show, we did Winnie the Pooh, just an adapted version of the original stories. Um, I would have my students work on the scenes in chunks. We wouldn't go through a whole scene at once. And we would stop at certain points before moving on. Now, instead of starting from the next chunk, I would have the students start from the beginning of the scene and work through to the next stopping point. It really helped them, make the adjustments as they were needed while reinforcing the parts that we had already worked on and fixed. Um, from the director's vision, I was really drawn to the sections on blocking and rehearsing with purpose. Katrin emphasized that blocking should serve the story and guide the audience's attention. In Winnie the Pooh, I had students spread out across the stage, but when a key line was delivered during Pooh's birthday party, I kind of adjusted the actors to subtly face Pooh. I didn't have them like fully turn to face the actor playing Pooh, but the small change really kept the audience focused on where it needed to be, and it made the movement feel more powerful because in this scene, there was a whole lot of clatter going on. There was other things going on, but having the uh, other actors almost facing Pooh but not quite really put the focus towards who was supposed to be being paid attention to. Um, so it really made it more powerful. And I also experimented with, levels and pathways and having students move around or use steps or adjust proximity to one another to make scenes visually interesting and reflective of character dynamics. Um, I really liked to take Rabbit, who kind of almost thinks they're better than everybody else, and place them on a higher level than everybody. Just kind of giving that visual of Rabbit almost looks down on other people. Um, Another piece that really resonated with me was the importance of flexibility and collaboration. Both Bogman and Katrin stress that blocking and rehearsal plans are guidelines, not rigid rules. Allowing students to explore and giving feedback in real time not only improves the staging, but also gives students a sense of ownership over the performance. Um, I also use structured peer feedback, like the 2 stars and a wish. It was something that we used when I was in high school, where students share 2 positive observations and 1 suggestion for improvement. It doesn't just encourage a supportive rehearsal environment, but it also teaches students to give and receive feedback constructively. Um, and before we start doing that, I set up this is how you give constructive criticism. We're not tearing people down. Um, Finally, both sets of readings emphasize the value of scheduling rehearsals thoughtfully. This includes pacing rehearsals, planning for breaks, and balancing scene work with ensemble games or skill building exercises. I always start rehearsals with some kind of a warm up game. Um, Whether that be something simple like Zip Zap Zop or something more intricate like the park bench game where one person sits on a bench and the other person in the scene tries to convince the person to stand up. Um, I will always start rehearsals with something that is going to work towards and help what we are doing in rehearsal that day. Um, it also helps students release, nervous energy. It helps them focus on collaborating with other students and engage more fully with the material. I've also noticed that it really helps kids leave that stress from the school day at the door. Um, and I also schedule breaks for the kids. I make sure to follow the same schedule every day: warm up, line work, break, scene work, notes. And I try to keep it in that order unless there is something that we really, really need to work on. And then if I'm changing it, I make sure to tell them at the very beginning, hey, we're taking a completely different direction today. Um, Now, I am also open and aware that things are going to change. Nothing's ever going to go according to plan, especially in a middle school setting. Um, that's something I've really had to come to terms with. And this is my 3rd year in the same middle school. And I'm really beginning to learn my kids, know how everything's gonna go, but I'm still very much aware things are gonna change and nothing is ever gonna go according to plan. Scheduling isn't just about fitting everything into my calendar, it's really about just maximizing the time so students can grow in what they're wanting to do while they maintain the energy and enthusiasm. Um, Overall, this week really reminded me that successful rehearsals are intentional, flexible, and student centered. Planning, repetition, reflection, and clear communication all work together to help actors understand their roles, take creative risks, and, perform confidently. Whether directing middle school or even high school students, keeping these principles is really going to transform how I structure rehearsal time and interact with students. And it's going to make my productions feel more cohesive and exciting. And I'm really excited to take the things that we learned this week and implement them into my own, theater program here in West Virginia. Thanks, guys.